I know we always talk about sports, but only thing I come up with, especially with everyone talking about the Mariners. We love sports around here. Watching it can entertain, inspire, cause heartbreak amongst a few emotions that stirs in us as passive viewers. Some can say cheering on your favorite team is a culture of life. Others can argue that it's just entertainment that you could switch on the same way you would do a movie or a show on TV. For us as friends, and especially if you've been following along, for 65, some 60 and a half, some episodes now, we love talking about sports and we like to wallow in it, in the pride and the pain of it, especially when our favorite sport or sports team is, victorious or not. And especially this past weekend, one of our favorite teams was ready was knocking on the door of finally breaking out a drought of making it into the postseason for the playoffs for the first time, and they fell short. And so it's one of those things where it's like, man, that could be something painful for a lot of us and whatnot. And so it's one of those things where we kind of want to kind of reflect on that, right? Have a little therapy session. So welcome to a new episode of Real Talk by Our Stories, Your Legacy. And we're back again with another fire round episode where we discuss any inspired topic of the week. And that just happened to be discussing one of our favorite subjects, sports, and one thing that just happened recently regarding our favorite sports teams. So in this episode, we're going to have a fun and quick chat talking about why we fall so hard when one of our favorite team does. And as always, before we begin, we're going to do a quick check-in around the room and see who is on today's episode. Of course, you have me, and then I'm going to introduce Zavon. How's it going, man? It's good to have you back on today's episode. Miss you, bro.
Yeah, man. Glad to be back.
How's it going with you today?
You know how it is. Same shit, different day, but hanging on. The huge.
There you go, man. And then pass the ball to the other friend on the mic. Tyler, how's it going with you today?
Going good. It's been a very long day. I feel like I did not get much rest this weekend. Because I went to Seattle pretty much four times in 5 days, and probably only got like 4 hours of sleep last night. So it made today a very long day, I would say.
Yeah.
For sure. I was definitely feeling it by like 10 in the morning, and I started at 7, and we don't get anything crazy happening until at least 8 or a little bit after, but things are like popping in to my like email, my inbox, everything this morning by 7:30, and it made a little bit of a hectic Monday for sure. So there's a day where it's a long Monday. Today is that day. It is your very typical Monday.
Right. And and that goes to show we try to do it every Monday just to kind of like break through that habit of punching that bad Monday feeling in the gut, to kind of end the night on a good note. So yeah, man, let's knock it out. Let's make it work. All right, let's get it started. So first question of the night, I'm open up to both y'all and jump in, and I'll jump in as well. When our favorite team that we cheer on wins, we feel like we also win, and the same thing is true in the opposite. When they lose, we feel like we also lose. But what is it about sports, especially, whether from your own experience or just in general, what is it about sports that causes us heartbreak, even when we don't actually have any skin in the game?
I can hop in on that one. I would say, going back, if you've been listening to us talk about this stuff for months at this point, I don't know, every week. I don't know if you listen every week or if you listen at all. But hey, the other sports episodes, we talk about camaraderie and really like buying into something like sports because it brings people together, but it's also like it builds a community. And we've talked about community a couple times in in our episodes as well, whether that be a sports community or like a video game community or any of those things. It's just one of those activities that brings people together over a common thing, common interest. Even people that don't necessarily follow sports or a certain sport, for instance, super closely, you can still be a fan of it. You can still cheer on your hometown team or your favorite team. I had someone tell me their favorite team was, whatever team it was. And then I was just curious, like, why do you like that team? They were like, well, it's close to the place that I love to go. So I was like, oh, all right. Yeah. See, so like, people just have their own reasons for liking certain teams and maybe not liking their hometown team or whatever. But I think, growing up, it's something to be a part of, to really kind of invest yourself in. I think as you grow up, typically you'll have some sort of sport you're playing, maybe not like a team sport. You could be an individual sport, long distance running could be your thing. Singles tennis could be your thing. Chess, it's not necessarily a sport. It's more of a game, but that's something, it's an individual thing. But, as you're growing up, you play these sports, and maybe it's because you want to, or maybe it's because your parents are like, I need you to do something productive and I need you to get all this energy out so that you just pass out and go to sleep or whatever. But you play these sports and you really kind of get into them, and then you start to idolize certain players and look up to certain players. And if you're wherever you live, if you have a hometown team, it's kind of the team you get almost like pulled into. Not always the case, but it's something to kind of buy into, I guess. And to the point of the question, I think when you start that at a young age, you kind of grow up with it. So you might not necessarily see like these people, like you don't know them or anything, but you've been so invested, they are part of your life at some point because you've either idolized them, watched them, or listened to them. I think the biggest one for us too, speaking of like baseball and the Mariners, Dave Niehaus, he was an announcer. He wasn't even a player, but he was that voice that was on the other side of the radio. When, growing up, you listened to a baseball game on the radio or something, you just heard his voice. You watched on the TV because, not everyone can go to every baseball game. There's 81 home games in a year. So, he's the voice that kind of narrated and commentated and stuff. And that's the voice you kind of get used to. And you hear it for, 162 game season. It's almost half of the year that you're listening to this person every year. And if they're part of that thing, you almost feel like you know them. Just like when we talked about Kobe Bryant when he passed away, like how big of an impact that he had on so many people. It's like, you don't know Kobe, but like when tragedy happened, like the whole world mourned, you know what I'm saying? Like it was just one of those things. So I think that is kind of the biggest thing is you tie into a community, you look up to these people, even if you don't know them, they could be your heroes. People cry when superheroes die, and superheroes are, fictional. These athletes are real players and everything. So I think when you buy into something, it's kind of a part of you at that point. So like a hometown team, like you get invested into it, or even if not your hometown team, you get invested into it because that's who you choose to follow. And you just want to see them succeed, and you want to share that like little bit of joy and winning or whatever with the team. It's a sense of pride.
Nice. Savannah, how about you? What is it about sports that can cause this heartbreak, even when we don't actually have any skin in the actual game that we're watching?
Pretty much everything that Tyler said. I 150% agree on. Like, whether it comes from a heartbreaking loss, especially like you know, with the Mariners, you know, just missing the playoffs by a hair this past weekend. It was sad. It was even sad to see, you know, the send off with Kyle Seager after 11 seasons of being with the Ends, something like that, or even to like the extremes of someone passing away, a sports legend. All these star athletes who make you have more respect for the game or the sport, whatever that may be. And people are glued to it for a reason, and people respect the game and the sport for a reason. And it's these athletes who persist and put in all this work and dedication from like their childhood up until their adulthood. That's years and years and years of persistence and conditioning and putting your body through a lot of stress, physical stress, as well as mental and emotional stress. And when you think about all those things and all that, all those challenges that these athletes go through, it really makes you respect them and the game. So, and I think that's where the heartbreak comes in, whether it comes to like a loss of, you know, postseason hopes, playoff hopes, championship loss of a player, retirement of a player. It's you know, you wonder why, for some folks that like to make fun of the fan base and whatnot and sports in general, they don't understand why folks do get emotionally attached to all these players, coaches, coaching staff, as well as like, yeah, the commentators who have done it for years and years and years. It's I think sports in general is what, you know, helps inspire us as individuals to attack on our challenges in life, whether, you know, that be at work, school, figuring out our life steps, because sports is a form of persistence, right? Whether you're put on the mound or you step up to the plate, step onto the track, the field, whatever sport you play or all these athletes play. It's a test. It's a test of persistence, and whether you can go through it mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, socially. It falls under the overarching umbrella of life and health in general, which is huge, right? Sports has served as an escape for whether it's athletes or fans. So we follow it so closely. We participate in sports so passionately because it serves as a form of escape. It gets us active. It gets us going. And in a way, it cleanses us, right? Makes us realize things like, I could have done this little thing better. I could have adjusted my golf swing in this way to get me out of the rough. Or, I could have kept my emotions in check before going against the, this player in coverage, whatever. So there's a lot that goes into it, and it's easily overlooked, right? When us as fans and as viewers, as the in general audience and followers of sports, it's easy to overlook when we're watching it on TV or in person, right? But there are times where we do process it. It's like, man, like, how is the team? How are the players handling this loss, right? Or how are they handling the win? What are their next steps? So something that is overlooked while we view it, but it's something we can definitely process in the long run throughout our lives and throughout the course of time. That's my take.
Thanks for that, man. Yeah, from what I hear from both you and Zavon, from Tyler and Zavon, it's just one of those things where, sports it's kind of like it inspires us because it's one of those things where like we see like a lot of human human characteristics in there, right? You know, the things they do. You talk about persistency, overcoming overcoming tests, you know, things that we inspire to do, and we see and read about it. And so it's one of those, it's just one form of art, you could call it a sport, of things that kind of just reflect um, you know, human life, human, trials and errors, things that kind of inspire us to cheer them on, because that's something that we like as humans to want to see people succeed, want to see people overcome um, plights and stuff like that. So so as a follow-up question, Zavon, I'm going to stick with you, because you brought up some great points, and these are things that Tyler brought up too. Tyler brought up earlier about how our sports heroes are kind of like equivalent of how we look at fictional heroes, Superman, Batman, Harry Potter, all those people. Even though for earlier podcasts, we don't think Harry Potter's top 5 character in his own story, but I digress. So Zavon, I'm gonna start with you. Can you equate the same heartbreak that you would feel, how we feel about sports players, these real life players who we idolize and we watch? Can you equate the same heartbreak of them losing to a fictional character in a movie or book, like our favorite fictional hero dying or losing something really painful? Can you equate sports to being the same as, like, a fictional character in a movie or book? Does it, provide that same heartbreak? Or would it be different because we're watching actual humans instead of an alien from outer space saving, Metropolis, for example?
I think in general, it varies from person to person, but each and every human being on Earth tries to look for something to be attached to for inspiration. Like, for example, some folks who don't follow sports at all, are a lot more close to comic book characters, right? And when they see a comic book character come to life on the big screen, especially, they get excited, especially for the legacy and how far they're going to continue through the cinematic universe. But then once that character gets killed off, they could just feel as strong of an emotional heartbreak as someone would who is following closely to an athlete, for example, who either retires, loses a championship, passes away, stuff like that. So I think it varies from person to person. Although I will say for myself, I have more of an attachment for inspiration and purpose through folks like athletes, right? Because of how much dedication and persistence they put into their work, their craft, not just into the game, but even off the field. You see, for example, Russell Wilson and all the work he's doing with the Why Not You Foundation, and him and his wife together, just working with a bunch of charities and organizations. It's humbling, I would say, and it's a very grounding experience when you see folks like athletes operate off the field, as well as on the field. You can see the emotions. If you watched the send off of Kyle Seager this past week, and I mean, I will say the coverage with it all, it's yeah, it was really, a real tear jerker when they showed, I think it started off with Kelnick. Oh, when he was in the dugout, it's oh, here it comes. And then they showed JP's interview post game. It's okay, yeah, you can feel the vibe, you can feel the energy that these players put into the game, and the impact that they leave on their teammates, the coaches, the coaching staff, the fan base, the folks that follow. And you don't have to be a huge follower, a huge fan, to follow every detail, or you don't have to follow every detail and every major sport update and whatnot. But I think if you just take the time to listen to, these players' stories and for the players who open up about their personal lives and the adversity they went through in their personal lives prior to participating in whatever sport that they participated in. You're just like, wow. It's like, man, this, for example, like this football player was homeless and he was able to make it into the pros and get like a nice 4-year $50 million contract, something like that. So it's stuff like that you look up to, and the success and the persistence that you appreciate from each one of these players, because they are human, right? They all have their own little stories, their places in life that they started. I kind of digress from the question, but I think in terms of like athletes and pro athletes, like there's a reason why these organizations like the MLB, NFL, and the rest like promote youth camps and all that stuff, because these kids look up to these athletes as heroes, as real life heroes, and that helps recruit and inspire the next generation of leaders and athletes and people to do good things in their lives and beyond, and carry on the legacy, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, hero is definitely subjective for each and every individual, but there's nothing wrong about that, right? As long as we find that figure of inspiration that helps us grow.
Awesome, man. Thank you. You hit the nail on the head on that one, man. Whether it's real life, human beings playing sports that we look up to, or a comic book character, us in general have try to find inspiration in things that inspire us. And so that whether that is, sports heroes or comic book heroes, it's subjective. It could be one and the same depending on how you look at it. Thanks, man. Tyler, how about you, man?
Yeah. I don't know if I have really anything to add to that.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question just so I can see if I can?
So I guess the question overall, and which kind of inspired, the summary is kind of inspired by Zavon's answer, is mainly the fact that, sports can be defined as entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't really have actual skin in the game. This is, for majority of people, we're watching our favorite sports team. We don't make money off it, and I'm not talking about gambling. I'm talking about literally like owning the team or something like that. Most of us don't have family members or significant others that are on the team. A majority of us, but yet we watch it, religiously, and feel elated when they win, especially a championship game. But then we also feel very much, pain when like a team that we love growing up watching loses, that we cheer on. So the question overall is like, is there any difference of us feeling heartbreak from watching a sports hero, giving it their all and losing because they're human beings, to like a comic book character, a fictional character in a movie or book or comic, losing something painful, losing themselves or whatnot, and we feeling that heartbreak? So, do they equate each other, or is sports different because they're humans, or is it very similar in a sense?
Right. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to have a quick review of the question. You went into the summary of the question, but
right. No, I wanted to add that little gem, especially,
Yeah, no, for sure. Based on that, I have to piggyback on Zavon's answer. I don't have really a good follow-up answer to that, other than what he was saying is it just really depends on who your hero is, honestly. Some people just don't follow sports. So like a comic or even a movie or whatever it is. I mean, hey, it could be an animal. Old Yeller. Come on. How many people cried in that movie? I'm not going to give any spoilers if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it though, maybe watch it. It's I don't know, 50 years old now. I don't know. I digress. But it's one of those things. I think people can get emotionally attached to whatever is. I was going to say sacred. It's not necessarily the right term, but whatever is important to them in whatever they're watching, whether that's sports where you can relate to them and you see them grind and you see them go through all the trials and tribulations. That story that we get on draft day every year, like this person came from a crazy background and you got to hear and hear and hear. Everyone has their story. But a lot of people can relate to a lot of the stories. Maybe they didn't make it past a certain level. So maybe they live vicariously through them, or maybe they know them, or it's just an inspiration type of story. Shaquem Griffin, for instance, is in the league and he only has, his one hand because everything happened when he was younger and everything with his other arm and stuff. So, a lot of people see him as a hero, because he made it. He was the difference. That's just one example, but for the people that don't really tie into sports, and, I can say that even with me being like a sports person, I still get attached to certain, I don't know, characters and movies and that stuff too. It's whatever you invest your time in, you know what I mean? So Marvel, for instance, you have these movies over like a 10-year span. You watch these same people in these movies, and when they pass away in the movie, it's like it hits home, So it's one of those things. So it really just depends on what you see as like a hero or how closely, related. I guess related would be a term there, that you can be to them. The person you look up to, maybe not necessarily even a hero, just someone that you kind of watch and idolize that way. Idolize, but aren't a hero, I don't know. Take it as you will. But yeah, stuff like that. I think, Zavon nailed it too with the whole Kyle Seager thing. Even if you don't know baseball and you just kind of follow the Mariners and whatever, you might know a couple people on the team. You might know their name, but you don't follow them. But just how everything went down, last night or yesterday afternoon, and the send off they gave Kyle Seager, it was very, very chilling. Very, very much similar to when Felix Hernandez pitched his last game in Seattle as well. I was at Felix's last game, and it was the chills were there. They kind of just punched you right in the feels. Because even if you didn't necessarily, follow these players religiously, it was the emotion that you can see on their faces and their players, teammates, all that stuff. It's just raw emotion there. And I think for a lot of people, when people start crying or they show emotion, you almost like just attach onto that, and you're like, oh God. Mm-hmm. And then you can't hold it back either. It's unexpected. It hits you in the feels, all the things. So yeah, don't really have too much else to add to that. I think it is, it is what it is on that. Whatever you deem important to you,
Yeah.
It is. And it could even be an inanimate object. You know what I mean?
Right.
It could be a video game console. It could be a book that means something to you. You lose it, you're still hits you in the heart. Could be a stuffed animal. Who knows?
Right. In the end, I think to summarize it up, it's one of those things where, it causes us a lot of heartbreak and emotions that we feel for it because it's something that we relate to, or we call it a hero, or things that we, inspire to be like, and it's kind of like you and Zavon said, it's like subjective because it's one of those things where what is it that inspires us, right? A lot of things inspires people differently, right? You guys may be inspired by Kyle Seager, but someone else can be inspired by a tree that their grandparents and great parents have nurtured and grew over years, and they kind of found it in a poetic sense resilient, through generations. It's one of those things. So it's one of those things for those who wonder. We kind of leave it on this final note. For those who wonder why sport fans are so into sports, this is one reason, to kind of leave it end it on a lighter note. This is why we throw our phones when our favorite sport team loses on a last minute goal or a last minute walk-off home run or a last minute touchdown. This is it, because we're so dedicated. We love it's like the equivalent of watching our team go down in the final seconds is equivalent to Tony Stark sacrificing himself at the end of an Avenger movie. Spoiler alert if for those who haven't seen it by now, for the one or two of you in the world. But so it's one of those things. It's things that we've become inspired by. Tyler, Zavon, any final words before we wrap it up tonight? Any final thoughts?
No, I'm good.
Nope. That's all I got.
Nice. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate our listeners, viewers, however you're watching this or listening to this. Are you a big fan of sports? Take that question, and reflect on it, see why you are a big fan of sports. Who knows? Maybe you're just a huge gambler and you just like to gamble. Who knows? On your favorite horse, or your favorite horse is very inspiring to you. We talked about how it doesn't have to be a person or thing. Maybe your inspiration comes from the mascot, and whatnot. Either way, take this question, talk about it amongst your friends, your family who are also sports fans, or maybe they're not. And then this is one way for you to let them know, hey, this is why I'm a big sports fan, is because Russell Wilson is my hero. The way that he does things on and off the field, and whatnot, or Mike Tyson's my favorite boxer because the powers that he showed when he was in the ring, inspire him to do such and such, and whatnot. So as always, we continue to learn because we keep the dialogue going. So keep the dialogue going yourselves, keep the discussion going, reflect on it. Maybe you have that mental discussion with yourself or with a significant other, or close family member, close friends. Either way, keep it going. That's how we all learn and grow as human beings. For us, we're not perfect, but we're going to keep at it. We'll come back with new questions and keep the discussion going, because that's how we grow and try to perfect our craft. So, as always, thank you for listening. This is Our Stories, Your Legacy. And we're going to see you again next week. So hold on tight. Have a good night. We'll see you then.
Later.